Out front tonight, Russia running out of cash. It's an astonishing prediction because it comes from one of Russia's most prominent oligarchs, Oleg Deripaska. He's warning that his country could run out of money as soon as next year, 2024. The quote from Deripaska, "There will be no money already next year. We need foreign investors." And here's the thing, Deripaska is actually in a position to know. He's an oligarch. He has been close to Putin for many years. And he's been very loyal to him. He's long been sanctioned by the U.S. and other Western nations, most recently because of the war in Ukraine. But it's not a new thing. As I point out, it's a long-time relationship with Putin of loyalty. In fact, one time I had to meet with him in Canada because he was banned from entering the United States. Now, the U.S. government said in 2018, quote, Deripaska has said that he does not separate himself from the Russian state. Deripaska has been investigated for money laundering and has been accused of threatening the lives of business rivals, illegally wiretapping a government official, and taking part in extortion and racketeering. There are allegations that Deripaska bribed a government official, ordered the murder of a businessman, and had links to a Russian organized crime group. That alleged murder is part of the reason he was banned from the United States. And what's more, Deripaska has the numbers to back his warning up that he's making right now on the cash issue. The Russian government revenue plunged 35% in January compared to a year ago. Spending went up 59%, and those are numbers they're allowing out there. Now, Deripaska did speak out against the Ukraine war in the very early days after Putin's invasion, and that was because he knew it would be bad economically for Russia, for himself. But at that time, Putin didn't listen. And in fact, even as Deripaska in that inner circle is giving that warning today, Putin is giving a very different impression about the Russian economy. Here he is days ago.
The Russian economy has proved itself to be much more resilient than in years past.
Now, Putin sells the Russian public the story that he wants them to believe. He says that so they'll believe it. And calling it out, saying that it's not true, comes at incredible cost. You may remember that we told you last week about this Russian lawmaker. You see him there. He's the one who posted the video of himself mocking that very same speech from Putin. He hung noodles on his ears while listening to the speech. That act demonstrates an old Russian expression, which just simplistically translates to stop lying. Well, that lawmaker has now been charged. The charge is discrediting the Russian armed forces, and he is now set to go to trial on March 7th. This is according to Russian state media for putting noodles on his ears. This isn't The Onion. And the reason for Putin's anger is the failure on the front lines. His forces tonight still failing to make any major gains in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force tonight claiming it shot down this Russian fighter jet in eastern Donetsk. You'll see the smoke coming from the wreckage. Ukraine says that this was a Russian Su-35 fighter bomber. And in Bakhmut, another day of death and no victory. We have new video into out front of the deadly battles there. This is a Ukrainian soldier firing a grenade launcher at a group of Russians. He then, you'll see, runs back to his armored car. His team throws it in reverse, you'll see here, and the armored vehicle comes under fire. Now, in this case, you see that incoming fire. They're filming this. I do want to let you know we do understand that this particular situation seems to have ended with them surviving. The battalion says that the truck's armor was able to withstand those sniper bullets as they're in reverse here. You're watching it. I want to begin tonight there in eastern Ukraine with Alex Marquardt. And Alex, I know you were trying to go towards Bakhmut today. What happened?
Aaron, we were trying to go with a team towards Bakhmut that was trying to evacuate civilians from the city. You'll remember there's some 4,000 or 5,000 civilians still in the city. That mission was called off when they found out that a critical bridge was blown up by Russians on a major supply route. Now, that has made Ukraine's already very tough fight in Bakhmut even tougher. We understand from Ukraine's military tonight that Russian forces are trying to still encircle the Ukrainians as they are desperately trying to hold their ground in Bakhmut.
For Ukraine's forces severed this destroyed bridge near Bakhmut on the last main supply route to the front. Bombed, a Ukrainian soldier told CNN, by a Russian missile. Meaning reinforcing troops or getting people out immediately becoming harder. We were on that road near Bakhmut, military vehicles bombing towards the fight and coming back.
The V sign for victory.
Russian forces have made progress at encircling the city, leaving only the west open to Ukrainian troops. The ferocious fighting has left thousands dead on both sides. Wagner forces, which have led the Russian charge, have paid a particularly high price. Today, Wagner's leader, Evgeny Prigozhin, on the outskirts of Bakhmut, released a video claiming, quote, the pincers are tightening. He called on President Volodymyr Zelensky to withdraw his troops, saying, give them a chance to leave the city. Prigozhin regularly exaggerates Wagner's gains. Ukraine blasted today's video as part of a disinformation campaign. But Ukrainian commanders admit they are facing withering Russian attacks. The Eastern commander posted photos today of a visit to Bakhmut where he was briefed on the problems with Ukrainian defenses. Despite no announcement of a withdrawal, some possible signs have appeared. This Bakhmut rail bridge strategically bombed by Ukrainian soldiers to make it impassable. The head of a Ukrainian reconnaissance unit saying they received an order to immediately leave Bakhmut without giving a reason. In neighboring Chaziv Yar, soldiers from an artillery unit told us they have no plans to stop fighting here, fearing what could then happen. The problem is not just Russia taking Bakhmut, Potapych says. They will not stop and will keep destroying the next cities. We need to wait for reinforcements to come and then kick them out.
So it is unclear whether those reinforcements are coming, Aaron, but when speaking with those soldiers, they did tell us that they want to keep fighting in Bakhmut. They think that if they lose Bakhmut, if Russia takes Bakhmut, then Russia will use that as a jumping off point to keep pushing into Ukraine, take that next town where we were, Chaziv Yar, and set their sights on other towns and cities deeper into eastern Ukraine. Aaron?
Alex, thank you very much from eastern Ukraine tonight. And out front now, Dan Rice. He advises Ukraine's armed forces and was also just named president of American University in Kyiv. He also just returned from Ukraine. And Nina Khrushcheva, a professor of international affairs at the New School and the great-granddaughter of the former Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. And so thanks very much to both of you. I appreciate it. It's good to see you both. And Dan, obviously, I know you're going to be spending even more time there, taking on this new position at the American University in Kyiv as well. So when you see Bakhmut and what's happening there, that bridge being blown out that Alex was just reporting on, Prigozhin saying, surrender, we're going to get you. And it seems from what we're hearing, right, this hasn't been going the Ukrainians' way, millimeter by millimeter. And, I guess some experts are saying, look, give it up in Bakhmut, lose the battle, win the war.
Absolutely. It appears that the feared Russian offensive is in Bakhmut. They're losing a lot of casualties. They're losing over 20,000 a month dead and about 3 times that wounded. So since November, they've lost about 75,000 killed in action. So basically Putin is betting everything on Bakhmut, which is not a strategic location. So Ukraine is giving up some territory, which is non-strategic. It's a 70,000 person city that basically is not strategic and has virtually nobody left in it. And the entire Russian army is being degraded. And by May or so, they're going to be basically a leaderless conscript army, and that's when Ukraine can counterattack.
And so, so you think that's how they're playing this or strategically doing this right now? I mean, Nina, this is in the context of what Oleg Deripaska said, that they're going to run out of cash by early next year. As we said, he did call for an end of the war in Ukraine at the beginning, but this is somebody Putin has known for a long time. He's been very much in that inner oligarch circle, such that it is. How significant is it that he is saying, it was a conference in Siberia or something, where he said there will be no money next year?
It's not the first time he's said that. And at the beginning, it was also a conference in Siberia, and he also was very open that we need the world, it will be over. He promised that Russian economy wouldn't survive, but then it sort of somehow survived.
It has lived through, yes.
Right. And he himself said a couple of months ago that apparently Russian market economy turned out to be much better than he thought it would be. But once in a while, he comes out with this warning that for now he can get away with, because it is. I mean, of course, Russia will run out of money, but I really don't think that this is Putin's concern anymore, because Putin is going to fight until he can, with the money or without. And businesses now are obliged, essentially, to pay for this war to a certain degree.
And so, on this, Dan, the top White House aide today, John Kirby, told Abby Phillip that giving lethal aid to Russia is still on the table from China, right? Yes. And that's something Putin is obviously very much trying to do, right? Because you talk about Bakhmut, you talk about the reality in Russia, he needs something.
He's running out of everything.
Out of everything. So would anything China could do or would do in the way that they would do it, which wouldn't be like a blatant in your face, here it is, would that change anything on the ground?
Well, Representative McCall has said that they fear that China is going to give 100 drones to Russia. Just starting to give arms to Russia, lethal arms, would be very dangerous, and it would be an escalation of the war. I think basically Xi Jinping has seen a masterclass in what not to do. He's seen basically Putin make every strategic blunder. To join him right now would be fatal. On the one hand, he's trying to negotiate peace. On the other, he's threatening to give arms. I think he's going to try to win over the world.
What's the right way to describe 100 drones? A drop in the bucket or meaningful?
It wouldn't be significant, but what it would be is symbolic. That means they're actually going in to support them. So drones would be able to help the Russian artillery fire become more accurate, and it is a big artillery war.
So Nina, the Kremlin today said strengthening the border because of this, what they call a terror attack on a village along the border. They said armed Ukrainians raided it, and Putin called the group neo-Nazis and said this.
It's been the focus of some of the most intense fighting in Ukraine for months as Ukrainian forces try to hold out against Russia's push to take the eastern town of Bakhmut. Now the Russian mercenary group Wagner says the town is surrounded with only one exit route. Wagner's leader Yevgeny Prigozhin has issued a video which he says was filmed in Bakhmut, calling on Ukraine to withdraw from there as its soldiers want to leave.
I appeal to the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Wagner units have almost surrounded Bakhmut. There's only one road left. If earlier we were fighting the professional Ukrainian army, today we see more and more old people and children. They fight, but their life in Bakhmut is very short, 1 to 2 days. Let them leave the city.
But the video is being treated with scepticism. We got an assessment from Victoria Zuhan from the BBC Ukrainian service in Kyiv.
Prigozhin, that we can identify, is standing on the top of the roof with a village or a town behind. So BBC News Ukrainian correspondents that are familiar with that area say that it is definitely not Bakhmut. Then Ukrainian armed forces have issued a statement that they recognize it as a village of Paraskovyivka that Russia has claimed to have taken few days ago. We haven't been able to confirm yet that it was Paraskovyivka, but it's definitely not Bakhmut. Then the camera pans to 3 men that are dressed in clothing and in the uniform of the armed forces of Ukraine. But they do not have any identification signs on the uniform. So usually in Ukraine, they have to be wearing signs that say their name and the unit they belong to. In this video, we cannot see any of that. So we are not able to verify their identities or their units. So the only thing we actually see is the uniform of the armed forces of Ukraine. And finally, these 3 men are filmed talking on this video. But as the camera pans to them, the wind is very, very loud. So as they speak Russian, I'm from Ukraine. I wasn't able to identify the accent. Could it be an accent in Russian language of a Russian speaker, or is it an accent from a Ukrainian speaker that speaks Russian in Ukraine? And of course, they didn't speak Ukrainian. So, summarizing all this, it's really fair to question whether those 3 men are prisoners of war, or maybe they were just Ukrainian locals, again, captivated by Prigozhin and his mercenaries.
Victoria Zuhan in Ukraine. Well, as the war there rages on, there's growing concern about neighbouring Moldova's breakaway region of Transnistria, where Russia has military forces stationed. The territory separated from Moldova in a civil war in 1992 as the country emerged from Soviet rule. Now there are fears that the conflict in Ukraine could spill over into Moldova, whose pro-Western government has spoken of the need to remove Russian troops from Transnistria. Lucy Williamson has been speaking to Moldovan veterans in Molovata Noa, a Moldovan enclave wedged beside Transnistrian territory.
The dirt road into Moldova's breakaway pro-Russian region is deserted, except for the convoy of cars carrying men in military fatigues from the village of Molovata Noa. Men now in their 50s and 60s, crossing into enemy territory as they did 30 years ago, when they fought pro-Russian forces for control of this area. Once a year, these veterans make a pilgrimage from the Moldovan village of Molovata Noa into Russian-controlled Transnistria, following a trail of simple monuments pale blue crosses made from metal poles that mark the places their comrades fell, sharing wine from a plastic bottle and remembering young men like Vasya.
I was coming down this road with Vasya. We are both snipers. He was hit in the neck with a shrapnel fragment. He fell to the ground and died in my arms.
But memories of the past here are now joined by fears for the future. Moscow has been talking up the threat of a Ukrainian assault on Transnistria, warning that any attack on its forces there will be seen as an attack on Russia itself. Moldova's president has warned of a Russian plot to topple her pro-Western government. As the veterans pass a local school, the pupils come out, with head teacher Tatiana Roska to greet them. There were big battles here in 1992 that left deep wounds, she says. We're very afraid. We know what war means, and we don't wish it on anyone. One of her pupils tells me she's ready to take up arms, as her father and grandfather did here 30 years ago. But the pull of Moldovan identity is set against the pull of subsidized Russian gas from Transnistria. There are those here who say that Transnistria looks after them, while Moldova's government, on the other side of the river Dniester, ignores them, and that President Maia Sandu is provoking a war with Moscow by moving closer to the west.
I'm going to be honest. It's very difficult to convince people that life is better in Moldova when they pay a fraction of the price for gas here.
The mayor of Molovatanoye, Oleg Gazia, says divisions here have deepened since Moscow cut gas supplies to Moldova last year.
We can't talk about freedom and a better life, and at the same time tell them to go across the river and pay 30 times more for their bills. They'll say, "Are you crazy?" But there's a hidden price. It buys